And I got a wild one for you today.
Okay.
So getting to that, Melissa, if I were to say Michael Jackson scandal,
Okay.
Hollywood production company CEO,
Okay.
wealthy heiress, mysterious death, scams, what goes through your mind?
Ooh.
A lot?
A lot. I'm like, what would this be? What would this be? As you know, I work in the film and TV industry as an executive
Right.
producer on documentaries,
Yeah.
on multi-million-dollar productions. I have a blast with my job. So I'm thinking the Hollywood connection, probably private funding money for some kind of project in the documentary space.
Well, documentary, yes. Projects, sure. Money, yes.
All right. Let's get into it.
All right. This is a doozy. This is actually my own personal story. It's something I went through and experienced along with my colleagues who are also my very good friends. And it's a wild one. So buckle up and let's get into it. I am calling this episode The Heiress Who Hustled Hollywood.
Ooh, okay.
So in 2016, I was working. So before I became a podcaster and, before you and I met, for almost 20 years, I worked in commercial banking. So
I could see that.
Yeah. Oh, could you?
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny.
Yeah.
I worked at City National Bank in Beverly Hills. I was in their commercial lending unit. So me and my team, we would lend money to businesses. So namely, when they wanted to buy a commercial building to operate their business out of, we would finance it. And I got really close with my direct boss and a few of my colleagues who also worked at that same bank. We would go out on calls together, get coffee, get drinks after work sometimes, you name it. And around that time, 2016, 2017, my direct boss and his boss, who was like the EVP of our unit, the big boss of our commercial lending unit, they got recruited to go over to another bank called Bank of California. And they were tasked, this happens in banking a lot.
Okay.
They steal teams. Like if you're doing well at one bank.
Why would they steal a team?
Because banks want to make money. And if you have a good commercial lending unit who's out there making profitable loans to business owners, they want that team at their bank to go.
Do they make commission on loans?
Yeah, I would make commission. So like whoever did the loan. So if I did a $10 million loan for a business owner to buy a building, I was a salaried employee with benefits. And then we also got incentives. Every time we did a new loan, we got money on top of that. It was very lucrative. And the banks make a ton of money on loans. That is their bread and butter. So whatever rate you charge a client, they're making money on top of that. They're making money on the loan fees that you charge, like the recurring interest income coming in every month. Like I'm getting into the weeds, but
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So teams, commercial lending units so me and my direct boss, his boss, and a few of my colleagues, we all got recruited to go work at Bank of California.
But you said no. Why?
Well, I 100% was on that train because I'm like, I will work at almost any bank as long as I'm with my team. And I had worked with this team for a while.
Okay.
And we were all really close. We all were good at our jobs. And we were desirable to this other bank. And so it's like, if we're going to take one, we're going to take all of you. And we all wanted to stick together. So my direct boss was like letting us know kind of in secret, because you don't want to let the bank know that you're about to leave, and they're like, hey, we got this opportunity. But I couldn't go right away to Bank of California. I kind of had to stay where I was and keep things quiet because I was under contract for at least a year.
You're under contract?
Only in the sense that I could have left, but I would have lost my signing bonus that I got to work at the bank.
Okay.
Said I'm like, I want the money, So I would have had to give up my signing bonus. And that's what happens. A bank, a lot of times when you get recruited to go work at a commercial bank, they're like, we'll pay you X amount of money as a signing bonus, but you have to sign saying you'll be with us at least a year.
Okay.
And if you leave, you lose. So my boss was like, cool, just be quiet. Don't act like you're coming with us later. Business as usual. So I stayed at the bank in Beverly Hills for a few months, but I did eventually leave as soon, literally like the day after my signing bonus, contract. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm putting
it in your Google Calendar.
It was 100% in my Google Calendar, but I did the professional thing. I gave them 2 weeks notice. So long story short, at that point in 2017, my boss from the previous bank, his boss, myself, and like 4 other colleagues who we'd worked together, we all were now at Bank of California in downtown LA. So I still had a commute, but it was a little better than Beverly Hills. But it was a great opportunity. There was some negative press going into it, which I'll get into. Basically, in 2016, there were allegations that came out that Bank of California, the bank that I was now at, their former CEO had ties to a con man. And then once those allegations hit the press, the Bank of California stock just took a dive. And that was right on the heels of us joining Bank of California.
Oh, no.
So, but we're like, they were paying us nicely. I was going to be with my team. We were all like, look, if this doesn't work out, we'll go together to another bank. That's just kind of how it works. Like there'll be opportunities. And there was also a former Bank of California employee who sued the bank and claimed that the CFO of Bank of California had taken Bank of California employees to strip clubs on the bank's dime. And there was a quote in the paper, and again, this is all right as we joined this bank. There was a quote in the paper of the person suing the bank saying, "It was a den of iniquity featuring on-premises sex, drugs, and strippers." So, and when I got there, there was all this gossip. And I know, I'm not going to spill the tea because I don't know what's true, what's not. But we all knew about the sex, drugs, and strippers quote. We knew there was some shit going on. Anyway, my colleagues and I, when we got there, we would do exactly what we did at the other Beverly Hills bank. We would go out and solicit businesses to lend money to. Typically, it would be commercial real estate. And our boss and his boss, who was again the EVP of the commercial lending unit, would often get involved in our deals. So for example, if I had a larger client, let's say they had a big business in Los Angeles and they wanted to buy a $20 million real estate, like a piece of commercial real estate, it's considered a larger deal. And so I would bring my boss and his direct boss on the call sometimes. Me and my team, we were to go out and solicit business. And if we got somebody who was interested, like, yeah, I am looking for a building, I'll let you guys take a look at my financial package, see if you guys can finance it. It would be our job to go and gather all their financial statements for the last 3 years, all their tax returns.
Do you normally work with their CPA and just go back and forth with them?
A lot of times, yeah. So, or they have like a controller or CFO within the company that would provide it to us. Usually companies, when they get to a certain size, they have an internal controller on payroll or a CFO who deals with the bankers and is like, gives us everything that we need to analyze whether you can borrow this money from us.
Oh, that's great.
And that's what we did. So, but my point is, it wasn't our job to do a deep dive into the financials. Our job was to gather the financial package, knowing the amount of money that they potentially want to borrow, and doing a quick analysis to see, like, does this pass the sniff test? Does it look like this is worth me passing this on to the next level, our credit analyst team, to see, like, yes, because you can't just like throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. You're not going to get any respect if you're a salesperson and go out and go, yeah, they want to borrow $20 million for a building. Here's all their financials. And then
that's a waste of time.
Yeah. And you come to find out they're about to go bankrupt.
So you're not like a TJ Maxx, like, do you want to apply for a store credit card?
Not at all. Exactly. And listen,
we'll just see.
they
got 5 minutes. We'll just see if you're pre-approved.
Let's just see. Yeah. It's like, it was our job. So that's exactly what happened. And we as a team were really close. And every single week we would have these pipeline meetings. So me and my team, it would be my boss. And then he would have like 6 of us who do what I did, right? And we would go in these weekly pipeline meetings and we would go up on a whiteboard and talk about all the deals that each of us are working on. So, okay, Jami, you've got this $8 million real estate deal. How's that going? Where are we at? Is credit looking at the financials? And then it would so on. It would go on to all of us to explain what we had going on to progress the deals. In late 2017, my colleague, who's still a good friend of mine to this day, we got really close working at this bank, he was referred a potential client. And again, that happens a lot. We, as bankers, if you've been doing it a while, you go to conferences and you go have coffee and you have drinks with like real estate brokers, CPAs, lawyers who can refer you their clients, their business clients, if they're looking for a bank or a real estate loan.
It's in their interest too, because they want to know how stringent is your underwriting for potential clients that they can then sell property to.
Exactly.
Wait, do you need a pre-approval letter to buy a commercial property?
Generally, yeah. They want something from the bank. It's just like residential. They want something to say like, yeah, we we're looking good as far as like we would approve this loan. They're, and that usually comes pretty early on. And then we go and like do a deep dive into the financials. But yeah, if it passes the sniff test, we can write a letter, like a pre-approval type deal. They call it something else, but I've forgotten. It's not a pre-approval because that's too strong of language. It's like a letter of interest from the bank, I think is what they call it. So late 2017, my colleague gets a phone call from a referral source of his who happened to be sort of like a big name entertainment lawyer in Beverly Hills. So in the past, I think I told you, so Barry Rothman had represented some really high profile clients. And Barry contacted my colleague and he said, hey, I've got a client. She is a very wealthy heiress. She is the CEO of a Los Angeles-based TV production company called Bellum Entertainment. And Bellum Entertainment produces a lot of true crime shows, some of the cheesy ones that you've seen out there. It's not it's not the high end stuff.
Is it still on the internet?
Oh yeah, it's still out there.
I
like
Google this.
Yeah, like every title has a murderer or murdered or
We're going to provide a link.
Yeah, but
in our show notes.
Yeah,
right?
now Bellum Entertainment is no more, but at the time it was, and it was a producer of true crime shows.
Is it
TV shows?
BELLUM?
Correct, entertainment.
Okay.
So he tells him like, hey, she's the CEO of this big company. She is also a very wealthy heiress. And the heiress that he was talking about was 66-year-old Mary Carole McDonnell.
So I just Googled it. I'm on Wikipedia, and it said that the main productions, it was produced by Long Needle Entertainment.
Correct. There's a connection. Yeah.
Okay. So
give us some titles.
Yeah, I want to. Murderous Affairs premiered on October 5th, 2016 in the United States on Escape. I don't know that network. The 52 episode series. That's a huge order.
Yeah.
Today, for context, to sell a TV series, you have to do a premiere, a pilot that has to be really big, a big story. And if it rates well, then they'll pick up like 4 more episodes to make 6 or 52 episodes.
Yeah,
that's insane.
And that's not the only one that they got that many episodes on. So, there's many true crime shows that a lot of you listening have probably seen, and Bellum Entertainment was the production company. And so Barry explained to my colleague that Mary Carole, the wealthy heiress, needed a $10 million bridge loan to cover personal expenses until she received her portion of her wealthy family's trust, which was worth about $80 million. So basically a bridge loan is just a short-term loan, and again, rich people all the time borrow money. It doesn't, like people are like, well, if you're rich, why do you need to borrow money? Her need for a $10 million loan was like, look, I'm about to get, a distribution of about $80 million from my family's trust. Or I think that was just her portion. It was worth more than that, but she had siblings, but her portion within the next year or so was going to be about $80 million.
So she wanted a payday loan.
So she needed, exactly, it's essentially what it is. Like, look, give me this $10 million now, and I'm going to pay you back when I get my distribution from my family trust.
Okay.
And so once the trust disbursements began, like I said, she would then go and pay back the bank loan. And again, this is not unusual for rich people to do this. So Bank of California took the meeting on this referral from Barry Rothman, and the bank really, like I said, and I know this for a fact, they weren't excited about this loan. The loan was going to go away in like a year, but they wanted those deposits because the bank, I remember going to sales rallies, like the banks have sales rallies, and like you got to drive down to OC, which is where the bank was headquartered, and you carpool with all your colleagues, and the CEO gets up on the podium and he's like, these are his exact words. He's like, deposits, 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 like getting us all hyped up to go out and bring in businesses that would park their deposits at the bank. And of course, we wanted to loan them money as well. But at that time, the bank needed deposits. And I'm emphasizing this because that's very important to this story. So that is why they took the meeting. So that's exactly what happened. The meeting was arranged at Barry Rothman's high-rise office in Century City. Mary Carole, the heiress, was there, as well as 3 of my colleagues, which would have been the EVP of our group, my direct boss, and my colleague who did the exact same thing that I did for the bank. The three of them went there. They met the heiress for the first time at Barry's office. This was December of 2017. From there, my colleague began doing his job. He started collecting financial documents for the loan, the $10 million loan, tax returns, financial statements, bank statements, you name it.
So everything clears.
Everything, well, sort of. So Barry is acting sort of as the liaison. So Barry Rothman, the lawyer who referred Mary Carole to my colleague, he sort of acted as the liaison, providing a lot of the necessary documents to the bank. So Mary Carole wasn't really like super involved in her own loan in the beginning. It would be like call Barry or email Barry and say, okay, we need these tax returns.
Is that weird?
Not really, because sometimes lawyers act in this, I think that's how they kind of presented it. Sometimes a lawyer will act as like their management. You know, this lady's so substantial, they rarely do anything for themselves. They have a person to do that. So it wasn't weird. And they knew each other so well for so many years, Barry and Mary Carole. And my colleague knew Barry really well. So it's like, if Barry wants to provide these financials, it wasn't weird.
Okay.
So starts getting all the financials. And we quickly, I say we, my colleagues, because I wasn't involved in this loan, but I heard about it, the process, because we would go to lunch together. I heard about it in our pipeline meetings. And they realized right away that the deal, meaning the $10 million loan, had warts on it, meaning this was not an A or a B deal. This was like a C or a D, or it was not, Mary Carole McDonnell personally and her business were not strong borrowers. In fact, the bank, if it hadn't been for the deposits that were supposed to come with, it was supposed to be like a couple $1 million in deposits, maybe more, plus the money that she was going to get from her trust. They were hoping that she would park those multi-millions at the bank. So the bank thought they were going to get a lot of deposits.
They thought they were going to get $80 million in a future deposit to
They
loan
did.
out.
They thought they were going to get about a couple million right away from her Bellum Entertainment operating account, maybe, get those deposits right away. And then when she gets her distribution from the trust, they'll get those and it'll be great.
Yeah,
and
$80 million is a lot of money you can loan out to other people.
Exactly.
And make a lot of money off of it.
Exactly. That's exactly what the bank was thinking. So although the deal had warts on it, as we say in banking, they still pushed forward because they thought, you know what, we can mitigate this risk. Meaning, like, Mary Carole didn't have the best credit. The bank, her company, Bellum Entertainment, wasn't all that strong. Like, there were warts on it, but the bank was able to mitigate that risk. Now, whether they should have pushed forward with this loan or not is an argument for another day. But they did, and they actually ended up working toward a $15 million bridge loan, which was going to be like a short-term line of credit. So it started out as 10, somehow it got to 15, and the bank was going to do it as a short-term line of credit. And what they did to mitigate the risk of she's not all that strong of a borrower is that Mary Carole had a $28 million investment account at another institution called Northern Trust. The bank was going to put a lien, for lack of a better term. They were going to secure that account at another bank. So if she wasn't able to make her loan payments, they could go and grab that $28 million, pay their $15 million off, and be good to go.
I'm confused about this other bank account.
Yeah.
This $28 million. When she provided her financials, did she show that $28 million that it was in that account?
She did.
Then why wasn't she just tapping that for her bridge loan to herself?
She had reasons for everything. Like, I can't touch that money right now because of this, or that. Like, she had a story for everything. Like, hey, I'm not really touching that money. It's sitting there. It's earning interest, but I'm more than willing to pledge it as collateral if that's what you need to get this $15 million loan done.
That seems safe enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, for a bank, there's no better source of collateral than cash. Like, if you default on this loan, we could just take your cash. Easy peasy, right?
Okay.
So the bank, and she agreed to it. So they're like, okay, this is how we're going to get around the warts on the deal. We're going to mitigate it by taking a pledge on your investment account, which I'm sure we'll never have to touch because you're going to make your payments. No big deal. So basically, in early 2018, as the loan starts to progress, we're all in a pipeline meeting, our regular weekly pipeline meeting, me and my team, my boss is there, my colleagues. And we're talking about all the loans, including Mary Carole's loan. And my colleague in passing, who was working with her on this loan, which by the way, I'm going to keep saying colleague because I'm not going to use their names just for, I think, obvious reasons.
Right.
But so my colleague just in passing is like, oh, you guys, by the way, we're about to close. Like we're just a few days from closing this loan with Mary Carole. She's going to stop by our office and bring us homemade pies. I guess she's this like really talented baker and she wants to thank us for all the hard work we've put in. And I remember.
Wait, is it like The Help? Was it a shit pie?
Oh, somebody else has brought that up. Somebody brought that up and they were like, was this a shit pie?
Did you eat shit?
But she was already gone by the time we ate the pie that she brought. Not her putty pie.
Pudding pie.
Putty pie. I don't want to call it because the other P word is just really aggressive. No, that is disgusting. I'm probably going to vomit any second now, but I could totally see her. Yucky.
Sorry, Jami.
So we ate the pies that she brought and no, they weren't shit pies. And I remember thinking, or pudding, definitely wasn't a putty pie. I hope not. God, that makes me just want to like,
oh my gosh, I feel like I have
rinse my
such
mouth
a dirty
out.
mind. I'm sorry.
But no, I think you're probably not the only one. I've never really thought about that. But yeah,
face down in her
face
pie.
down and not the pie she made, not her pie, not her putty pie.
I think you said in her pie.
I know because she made it, but not. No, ew. So I remember thinking like. That gave me pause because if you know where we worked in like the 20 something floor of this big high rise building in downtown LA.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't a regular bank branch that people could come in and there's tellers and you could withdraw cash. There was no vault. It wasn't a bank branch that customers went to. It was just a big commercial center that different teams of the bank worked at, but no outside clients were really coming in. I mean, every now and then somebody would come in to sign loan documents or something like that. But when you're working with these like wealthier business owners, they don't come to you to sign their loan docs. You always go to them. So
with a notary.
Yeah, like exactly. We would bring a notary and we would go and sign the loan docs at their office. We would take every meeting at their office. So it gave me pause that this extremely substantial wealthy heiress who's the CEO of this big company is going to get in her Porsche. She also has a Porsche. Mm-hmm. Is going to get in her Porsche from La Cañada and drive to downtown LA and fight traffic and park and come all the way up. Like, I just was like, wow, she's really cool. Like to just bring so considerate. And so anyway, she comes in. I will never forget what she was wearing. She, like I said, she's a 66-year-old woman at this time. She's kind of on the taller side. She's a white woman. She was wearing what looked to be like an expensive white button-up collared shirt with like the sleeves cuffed and maybe half tucked in the back, not tucked, you know? And she was wearing these boyfriend style like jeans that were cuffed at the bottom so you could see her ankle, but like, you know, and she was wearing like these camel colored like wedge shoes and a camel colored what looked to be a Birkin bag to match. So she looked rich. All right. So she walks in, I see her. Our pipeline meetings were all held in this room where like all the walls are glass. So you can see everything, everybody walking up. She walks up and I'm like, okay, this checks out. Like she is a wealthy freaking bitch. Like she's got this Birkin. She had a Birkin in one hand and the pies in the other hand.
You didn't know it's probably a mirror one-on-one.
Yeah, I was going to say like, who knows if China. It was really real? Exactly. So she comes in and I hopped up out of my chair and wanted to thank her for the pie. So I come out of the meeting and I'm like, hi, Mary Carole. My name's Jami. I work with so-and-so, my colleague, and he's told me all about you. And I'm fascinated by what you do. You make true crime shows. I probably watched half of them, yada, yada. Nice to meet you. Shook her hand, walked away. That was it. We ate the pies, not her pie, but the pies that she made. And that was that. Okay. So moving on, shortly after that, nothing seemed off. I mean, it gave me pause that she came in because that was extremely rare, especially for somebody as like substantial as her. But I'm like, oh, she's just a really nice person. Nothing seemed off though, other than her bringing us those pies and whatever. February of 2018 rolls around, the $15 million short-term line of credit, it closes, it funds, and now Mary Carole is able to call into the bank whenever she wants and draw down money on this line of credit. It's kind of like a credit card, like you can call. So she would call our operations center, which was also in that office that I worked in, and be like, "Hi, it's Mary Carole. We just, you closed a loan for me. I need to draw down $1 million. Go ahead and deposit it into my bank account." So that's what she would do. She did it numerous times in rapid speed. So right after the loan closed, she would call and go, "I need $300,000. And every time she asked for a draw, even though her line of credit was approved, draws of that size, withdrawals, had to be approved again. Like you can't just call and go, "I've got $1 billion line of credit." I'm making up numbers. Give me $5 million off that line of credit and transfer it to my account. That $5 million request has to also be approved by somebody high up in
Sign
credit.
off on it.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what was happening right after the line of credit closed. She immediately started calling. "Can I get 500,000? Yeah, sure. They approved it. Transfer it to her bank account." What was interesting is her bank account was not yet at Bank of California at that time, even though it was part of the loan agreement that at loan closing, your bank accounts need to be here at Bank of California. Because if you think about it, it's higher risk.
Yeah.
If those deposits are going outside the bank, it's harder to control.
Yeah, external bank transfer.
Right. So she would call one day, "Give me $500,000. They would do it. "Okay, I need $1 million. I need this."
At what point, though, if it was supposed to go up to the next level, why didn't that person say, "Oh, I noticed it's not going into your bank account here. It's going into an external bank account.
Right.
Per your agreement, we can't approve this until you..."
And maybe those conversations happened and you're going to find out. I still to this day have so many questions for our credit team at that bank because, spoiler alert, they never should have made this loan. They never should have made this loan.
But also I'm seeing here is a lapse in where she could have been caught just with...
Yes. And this isn't the only lapse.
This simple, if you're saying it has to be approved, then...
They approved it. Somebody high up, and I won't name names, but the gentleman who was the chief credit officer for the bank. Now, mind you, this is a multi-billion-dollar asset bank. This isn't like a tiny little podunk bank. So he's a smart guy, and he had been at that bank for many, many, many years. He's the one who approved the $15 million loan. And I am positive, but I'm almost positive he was also the one approving every single draw request that came in. And now I can't answer for why he didn't say, "Well, let's put a stop to this until you bring your deposits over."
Maybe she knew about his strippers.
Well, exactly. Well, what I think, it's interesting. You're kind of touching on my theory of why he made this.
She has some information maybe.
Yeah,
or knows some things.
Like,
she
God,
knows some things.
Give me all the conspiracy theories. Let's go. So over a week, maybe 2 weeks tops time after the loan was approved, she had drawn $14.2 million of the $15 million was now in her possession at another bank. Okay. Then the next month is when the first payment came due on her line of credit. This is the first time she'd be making a monthly payment.
What's a payment like that?
To be honest, it was interest only, I want to say. So she was allowed to make interest only payments. There was no principal being paid down, I think, on this loan. That's how they underwrote it. So yeah, it was probably substantial to a lot of people, but that's a pretty darn good deal for a business owner who wants to keep their monthly payments minimal. There was no principal being paid down. All the principal was going to come at the end when she paid it off in one lump sum, if that makes sense. It was just interest only payments. So the next month rolls around, her payments due, but Mary Carole doesn't make her first payment. Now, this is a huge red flag. When you're a lender, when you're a bank, and you make a loan to somebody, whether it's $100 or $1 billion, if they don't make their very first payment, that's a huge red flag. And it sets off all kinds of alarm bells. And it's really bad because the bank is regulated by the government, and that's not good on the bank. So it's bad. So the bank tries to reach Mary Carole. they start with like my colleague, right? Because he knew her best. And they're like, oh, give her a call. Maybe she just like slipped her mind or
Can you
whatever.
imagine seeing that in your inbox? You need to call Mary Carole today because she missed her first payment.
Yeah.
If you're that person
Yes.
who got the loan,
Yeah.
getting that email, it would be a pit in your stomach. Like,
Oh,
oh,
shit.
First of all, like, this is not going well. And two, to make that phone call, like, what are you going to get on the other line?
Yeah.
Someone like sad, I'm so sorry, or ignored.
Or offended that you even
Oh my
called. How
gosh.
dare you? Of course we made the
already
payment.
made the payment.
Like Anna Delvey. What are you, stupid? You're so poor.
She could say that back to her. You're so poor.
You're so poor. You're so poor. I have people to make payments for me. So the bank tries to reach her several times. She's not calling back.
So she did that method.
Right.
Just ignore it.
And so the shit is hitting the fan. They're like, okay, fuck. What are we going to do now? So the chief credit officer, the one who made the loan, the one who ultimately penned the deal, meaning like he signed off on this deal, he has an inkling to be like, okay, this is a red flag. Oh, but we have that investment account that if she's going to continue not making her payments, we'll just call that account and we'll get that money and we'll pay ourselves off and we will just ride off into the sunset. He's like, I should probably call Northern Trust just to verify that we're good on our cash collateral, right? Like just to make sure.
That's a little late though.
You think?
I thought this phone call was made before the loan was.
Well, you would think. So guess what happens when he calls Northern Trust and he's like, hi, this is so-and-so, the chief credit officer over at Bank of Cal. You probably know us. Our mutual client has a $28 million investment account at your bank. I'm just calling to make sure because it's pledged as collateral on our loan. Just want to make sure that it's, secure and that we might be calling on you to get our money. And lo and behold, that employee's like, Mary Carole's we don't have a client named Mary Carole McDonnell. There is no $28 million investment account. The account doesn't exist. And this is the, oh shit. Like the bank is shitting actual bricks at this moment. Because that's when they know, like, we've been duped. We've been duped. She's not calling us back. She gave us a fake account to secure this. And of course, your first question is, how does such a smart and decent sized commercial bank with savvy people working there, how do they make a $15 million loan that supposedly has a $28 million deposit account as collateral? How do they not perfect that collateral before they let her draw on the loan?
Right.
They didn't do that, clearly. Because if they would have perfected their lien on that collateral account,
you wouldn't be talking today about this.
Exactly, that it doesn't exist. So huge blunder. I don't care what is like, it's the biggest blunder. Like it's such a rookie move. To this day, I still don't know how it happened because I'm not involved in credit. I don't know what they did or didn't do, but it didn't happen. Yeah. This is the oh shit moment. This is fraud. So, and in fact, they never hear from Mary Carole, the heiress,
fraud.
again.
Explain why it's fraud. This is not someone that, this is somebody who lied about having a $28 million account.
Exactly. It's fraud.
That's why it's fraud?
It's fraud on that level. And then they would come to find out on multiple levels. So just initially, when they called to verify this collateral account, it doesn't exist. She presented documents saying that it does.
Forged then. She forged.
It's forged. It's false. It's fake. So that is fraud. And you cannot do that to a federally regulated, government-backed loan. Like you're going to get federal charges. Like it's a big deal. And so they're just kind of like, okay. So then they're starting to realize like, okay. And that's when the talk starts to swirl. And my colleague was like, holy fuck. They just found out the account's not real, this and that. We can't get a hold of Mary Carole. I think this was fraud, like, holy shit. And I'm like, oh my God, this is bad. So, and then of course they're like, where the fuck is Mary Carole? Like, where is Mary Carole? Nobody knows where she is.
She provided an address. Didn't anybody show up at her home?
Oh yeah. She wasn't there. She was nowhere. She just could not be reached. And you'll find out to this day, like kind of how it unfolded. Cause we're like 5 years after this all happened now. We're in 2023 now. This happened in 2018. And so on March 9th, the exact same day that the bank finds out that this is very likely fraud, $15 million. Barry Rothman dies unexpectedly
Oh my gosh.
and mysteriously. Like, so the rumors are swirling. Like, we're all just like, holy shit, we're all trying to get our work done, but this is a big deal. Like, fuck, we lost $15 million.
And Barry died.
And then Barry dies, and we hear that he died mysteriously in the dental chair. So we're like,
what?
of course,
What do you mean? Died
meaning he
mysteriously?
went in for a dental procedure, died during the procedure. So we're like, okay, what the fuck? Like, and of course, my true crime brain is that bitch didn't want to share the money with him, so she had him killed, or he knew too much, and now she's caught. So if he's dead, because he was probably in on it with her, right? Or he knew too much.
What's the likelihood it was an accident?
It could have been, but just given what we knew, that like we're starting to realize that Mary Carole may be a huge fraudster and not a good person. And for him to die in the dental chair, you're like, well, no, this isn't tracking. Like, she may have had something to do with this. And it wasn't just me who thought this. The bank gets this news that Barry died mysteriously, possibly in the dental chair.
Mhm.
The bank hires security guards to guard all the entry points to our offices. They took it seriously because they're like, we don't know where Mary Carole is. We think she's a fraudster at least, but maybe even more. And now Barry Rothman's dead. He probably helped her. Maybe she had something to do with it. We got to protect our employees. So we had guards guarding the doors to all of the entry points. And you can just imagine, we're getting drips of information. We don't know the whole puzzle.
Story.
We're just like, this heiress just fucking took off with the money.
And
We still can't find. And Barry died. Where's Barry?
Mysteriously
In the dental chair. Yeah. So bizarre. So then we learn that quickly after that, we learned that Mary Carole also apparently had a brother who died mysteriously years prior. And of course I'm thinking, okay, well, she wants to get most of her family's trust money. And if with one sibling dead, she gets a lot more money. That was where my brain was going.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I had anything to prove it, but I was like, well, fuck all this when you stack up enough circumstantial evidence, it becomes pretty like, okay, maybe there's something to this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just like all in a tizzy. And meanwhile, every time you got to go to lunch or go anywhere outside the door, you got security guards. So it just was a big deal. And when you rip off a bank for $15 million, or when $15 million goes missing and it's a FDIC insured bank, the FBI is going to come in and investigate. And they did. So it was a big deal.
That was going to be my next question is, because you have to make up that 15 million. Where does a bank come up with a new, fresh 15 million?
Well, two ways. So one way is that because they are insured, they can go and apply to the insurance company that insures the bank and go, look, we made a loan. It was fraud. We'd like to get reimbursed. It's just like at your house. If you have damage, yeah.
I had no idea.
Yes.
So they weren't really worried about the 15 million because they can call it in from their insurance company.
They are worried about it because it's a huge shit stain on their reputation.
Mm-hmm.
It's people are going to get fired, and they did at the bank. It doesn't make the bank look good. It makes you look like rookies that you just let 15 million walk out. Plus, when you file that big of a claim, I'm sure other rates, your insurance rates go up. Like there's probably just all kinds of trickle. So it was a big deal, but they applied to get the money back and thought that they would. But lo and behold, their claim got denied.
What? From the insurance company?
And you know what?
Oh, okay. I was about, okay. So I'm going to be really transparent.
Yeah, please.
Okay. I'm like, okay, a bank, it's not a person. Like,
sure.
You don't humanize.
Unsympathetic
victim to me. Oh, now the loss of 15 million isn't going to hurt their patrons, their clients,
right?
Like you and me.
Yeah.
We go to the bank and the bank made a mistake on 15 million. Like, sorry, we cleaned out your account.
Yeah, no, and
to cover it.
Right.
So it's not that.
No.
Okay. So my sympathy for the bank is like, there was a tick. And then when you said, oh, there's insurance and they'll get their money back. So
you're like,
no
okay.
losses. Nobody suffered anything. Okay.
It's fine.
All right.
The ramifications where it gets really shitty is that my whole team was fired over this. So the people that I knew and loved and still to this day are very good friends of mine, they're good, solid, ethical bankers. They had worked so hard for their clean reputation in banking. And so the EVP, who I went over there with, my boss, and my colleague, who were all involved in bringing Mary Carole in to the bank, they got fired. And that sucks. Two of them had families, wives, kids, and I'm happy to say they've all recovered and they're doing fine. But it was a huge stress on them. They had to be put on leave. Nobody was allowed to contact them. They were just in limbo. They didn't know what was going on at the bank. We didn't know what was going on with them.
Hey, lie detectors, it's Jami. I don't know about you, but with my youngest back in school, I've fallen into a dinner time recipe rut. Okay, let's be honest. My recipe rut started long ago, but who's keeping track? By the time I finished work, picked up my daughter from school, taken her to basketball practice, and helped her with her homework, I am exhausted and I do not feel like being creative in the kitchen. That's when HelloFresh comes in clutch. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit for a reason. They do all the shopping and meal planning for you. And with over 40 recipes to choose from every week, there's always something delicious to discover. Ingredients come straight to your doorstep, pre-portioned and ready to cook, along with pictured step-by-step recipe cards. Melissa says it's the pictured directions that made her really love HelloFresh. It's like a cheat sheet for dinner. My favorite thing about HelloFresh is that all the recipes only take about 30 to 45 minutes to make, which means I have a lot more time to binge the next true crime documentary. And if you're really in a rush, HelloFresh even has ready-to-heat meals like their spicy Creole stew. Meal kits like these are such a lifesaver when it comes to saving time and money on groceries. In the past, I've raved about Green Chef. The cool thing is that Green Chef is now owned by HelloFresh, providing a diverse range of meal plans to cater to everyone's tastes. Even my 10-year-old, whose diet consists of PB&Js, mac and cheese, and not much else. If you happen to follow me on social media, you know that I started getting the most consistent I've ever been in the gym. And honestly, it's been really hard for me to be consistent with both the gym and a healthy diet in the past. It's like I was only able to handle one of those consistently at a time. But with HelloFresh, all the stress that comes with figuring out what healthy meals to cook every night is completely gone. If you're ready to make meal planning easier this fall, go to hellofresh.com/50lipstick and use code 50lipstick for 50% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
So really, your colleagues were the victims in the sense that their reputation was tarnished, and then also the look that people were thinking, like, were they involved in it?
And that's exactly what happened, is the FBI came in and grilled their asses and trying to find out, were you in on this? Like, did you have something to gain from this? You worked really hard to bring her into the bank. Like, what did you, and I can just squash that. They had nothing to do with it and no evidence was ever found. I already knew, like they had they got duped.
So there are victims and the victims are your colleagues.
Yeah. And exactly. And they're all fine today and people can feel sorry for them or not feel sorry. It sucked. They're human beings and they really were just doing their job. And it's credit's job to underwrite the financials and determine whether to make the loan. Nobody from credit ever got fired, just so you know. Like, that's where I always had an issue. Why are my colleagues out there doing their job? And I get it that they should be fired too. Just, they had a hand in it, bringing her in. Not that it was nefarious or that they knew this was going to be a fraudulent. They didn't know. They thought they were just doing their jobs. But credit actually did a deep dive into these financials and knew intimately well this was not a good borrower.
You made a good point. Your colleagues and you are at the surface level of the loan, and the deeper conversations are with another department, and those folks were not affected.
Got off scot-free. And I don't know why. I have a theory on it that I'm happy to share later. But that pissed me off. So by this time, when this is all going down, like, you're going to see how this whole event, meeting this lady and my colleagues getting fired, is the entire reason I'm sitting in this chair today with you, a full-time podcaster. This event changed the trajectory of my life in a major way, which I'll get into. But so this was just a big deal. The FBI comes in, they grill everybody.
What was that day at the office?
Oh my God. It was just, we got no work done.
I'm getting visuals of the Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, it's totally like Wolf of Wall Street. You have all these professionals walking around in these expensive suits and, buttoned up and whatever. And they're being called in and they're being grilled by the FBI and they're being accused of like, you were involved, right? I'm making up words, but like kind of along that line of questioning. And I remember my colleague, the one who kind of like was who did what I did at the bank, he came out, his face was white. I will never forget him walking out. I felt like he was either going to cry or vomit or both. Mm-hmm. And I said nothing to him because I could just tell it was a lot. He had been interrogated. He was reeling from all this. He's still trying to figure out, why did Barry refer me this lady? What happened to Barry? Barry was his friend and now he's dead. So he's like mourning that. This heiress just took this money. Like I might be fired. Now they say I might be in on it. Like it was just a lot.
Like, do I need to hire a lawyer?
Yes. Do I need to hire a lawyer? So I did eventually talk to him. He kind of gave me an idea of what they were saying to him. And it was just really scary. But my colleagues were eventually put on leave. We were not allowed to contact them. They weren't allowed to contact us. And eventually they were just terminated. And we saw the writing on the wall, like they're not going to survive this. And they didn't. And I was miserable during this time because the only reason I was at this fucking bank that had the shittiest press, was for my team. And we would just had
and they got fired.
And they got fired. So I am no longer happy. I am miserable. And of course, since my two bosses are fired and my close colleague, they bring in these other assholes from the bank to be my temporary boss. And they're fucking assholes. Uh-huh. And they were saying all this shit, like blaming my colleagues and, oh yeah, of course, who goes out and brings in, of course it was fraud. And it's like, bro, you also could be duped by you know what I mean? If somebody produces false documents, like stop acting like you're smarter than they were. It was just dumb. Yeah. And I remember crying in meetings after that. And I'm not a crier at work, right? You just try to be professional. It was I was so angry because what was happening was one of the higher ups, I want to say he was one or two down from the CEO of the bank. I will never forget him. He sits across from a conference table, kind of like this one, but bigger. He calls all the remaining people who survived this in, including myself, and he sits across the table and he's bald-faced lying to us. He's trying to throw my colleagues under the bus as if they just did something so stupid and that the bank did nothing wrong in this and that this, and that. And I looked at him and I questioned. I was like so fucking out of there. So I was like, I'm just going to lay it on him. And I looked at him right in the eyes and I was like, that's a lie. And I know it's a lie because they're not responsible. I said, every time Mary Carole called and wanted $1 million here, $2 million there, it was the credit team, your buddy, who has to approve it every single time. I'm not saying I want him to get fired, but why is he not on leave right now? And he looked at me and he said, because that's the way it is. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. Like, you just need me to shut up. And the bank is going to run with this narrative that, look, we hired some bonehead people. We've gotten rid of them. They brought this stupid loan in, but they're never going to accept any kind of responsibility for their kick-ass credit team. They should have never made this loan. And they did. And it was a huge blunder on the bank, but the bank did not want that narrative out there because this was hitting the press. Because this is a publicly traded bank.
Remind me again, who was supposed to check on that secured funds of 28 mil?
That's the credit team. Okay. That is all credit.
Who did not get fired or laid off.
Right. Okay. So they made a $15 million loan, allowed her to make every draw on it, all the way up to $14.2 million, never knowing that their pledge, their collateral wasn't even collateral. They had never even secured. It's like, you let me walk off the lot with a car that I financed and you didn't secure the lien and I stopped making payments, but you're not allowed to repossess that car because your bonehead credit team didn't perfect their collateral. Like they don't actually own the car. They blundered it, you know? But yeah, so I was just pissed off. So I didn't last long. I knew I was out of there. I immediately started interviewing at other financial institutions, knowing that when I was able to talk to my boss and his boss, that they would take me somewhere with them probably. Like I knew they would probably get another job somewhere. They were very
Did you
well
start
respected.
talking to them even though you were told not to?
One time. And that's what, I won't use their names, but yes, we did. And it was one time we were both very careful about it. Like, but it just was the kind, I just needed to know it's the kind of thing where it's
you
like,
okay?
Yeah, it was a you okay. And also what's our plan? Like, where are we going? Cause I would go with them anywhere. Like they are just rock solid and we trusted each other. And I was like, where are we going after this? Kind of like we go as a team. And so it was kind of us making plans like, listen, this is all going to fall apart. We're probably going to be fired, just hold tight, stay there, business as usual, but we'll figure this all out. We'll reconvene when we're allowed to talk to each other. And we did do that eventually. But just as a plan B, C, whatever, I was also interviewing at other institutions just to line something up in case, I don't know when I'm going to be.
Did that come up in your interviews? Hey, I noticed that there's a $15 million loan issue.
No, it didn't.
Did it make the press or no?
Yes, because it's a publicly traded bank. So it did make the press. So it was big in the financial world. But if you're not in the financial world, like you would have never even known this happened.
Well,
but
who would have reported it?
All the financial, like it's financial news. When there's a bank that you can buy stock in and they have a big scandal like this, even like the strippers, sex and whatever, that also made because it's a publicly traded bank. People own stock in this bank. And so this is something the stockholders are going to want to know, that the bank just let 15 million walk out the door.
Wait, I did not know there's this like trade place to know all the juicy secrets about banks.
Yeah, there is. And I read all the articles.
I want to know about the bank that I bank with.
Yeah, you can go. There's going to be, if it's a publicly traded bank, chances are there's going to be an article if there's a scandal or something big that happens.
Are they all dirty though?
Yeah. And listen, that's a strong statement.
Dirty meaning like they have blemished.
Yes, all of
They
them.
have blemished reputations. All of them do.
All of them. And they're all essentially the same. That's why it's kind of like me and my colleagues are like, it's about the people you work with. I'll work at this bank that has bad press, but as long as I'm with my team and I'm doing my job the right way and I'm behaving ethically and I'm feeding my family, like, okay, whatever, it's kind of like that. It's kind of a flippant way to say it. But yeah, I mean, like you're never going to go to a bank that's just got this stellar reputation. You're going to find something. You're going to find something, some predatory lending, maybe some shenanigans with the higher ups who get too much power.
Racial profiling.
Yeah. And it's a real thing that like, if you work at a bank and you have a high, really like a higher up, high powered position, you have fangirls within the bank. You have fangirls like who are gonna, I'm telling you, like
this is just another world.
Somebody who makes a lot of money. Yeah. Anybody who makes a lot of money and holds a high powered position, it's ripe for scandal. Not that every single one will end in a scandal, but you know what I mean? It's just, you get a little power, you get a little money, and it's just kind of ripe for, you go on a lot of business trips. We do a lot of things together. There's hotel rooms that are secured where your colleague's in the one right next door to you, stuff like that. So shit happens. And this isn't the first time that I knew of stuff going down at the bank, So I was interviewing, I was out of there. I was miserable. Shit was going on every day. And I was just rolling my eyes like, you motherfuckers, I hate all of you. Like you're liars and yada. I was
like
just
some people right now listening to the podcast are thinking about their jobs.
Yeah, maybe
Hopefully
they are.
Not very many.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not very many.
Hopefully you love your job and you're driving, listening, ecstatic about what you're going to.
Yeah, exactly. I hope that you're super happy and this Mary Carole doesn't come in.
I wasn't looking at my watch. I was looking at my evil eye bracelet.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to keep track of time. It's not
I wasn't
you
giving you
at all.
a social cue like, damn,
no.
Jamie, this is like going.
No. It is kind of a long one, but we'll promise we'll get through it. So a month later, after all the shit goes down, I'm still not really able to talk to my colleagues. I'm actually this close to accepting a position at another financial institution. I had gotten the job. It was mine if I wanted it, but I just hadn't accepted yet. it was a Friday. I was working from home that day, still working at Bank of California, but I was working from home that day. I was at a Starbucks right by my house. And I get a phone call, and it's my husband. My husband is a landscape contractor, and he owns his own companies and in that field.
And he's such a cool guy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As yours is too. And they're both named Steve.
Yes.
And he calls me, and I could tell in his voice he's a little panicked. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, hey, do you have a sec? He had a right-hand person who'd worked with him for years in his business. Well, she had just informed him, I'm going to be leaving. I've accepted another position. And my husband is just very like, he trusts her. She did a lot of things that he can't just trust anybody with. Mm-hmm. And he's panicking like, well, what the hell am I going to do? And so at the same time, I was desperately wanting to leave Bank of California. Like I needed to be out of there like tomorrow. I couldn't stomach one more day there. And a light bulb went off, and I'm like, babe, what if I just like quit my job? I'm going to put in my resignation today. Like today, I will submit my resignation at BOC. I'll come work with you. I have all the expertise, I'm in finance essentially. Mm-hmm. So I can do all your books. I can do whatever she was doing, whatever. And we'll just figure it out. But the plan was for me to just work with him temporarily so that he had somebody he could trust while she's leaving, and then eventually just hire someone else. And I would take this other position, still doing what I was doing.
You're going to be a bridge.
Yeah, I was going to be a bridge, just to tie it back into that 15 mil bridge loan. Exactly. And my husband's like, let's do it. And we didn't even talk about like, what are you going to pay me, honey? Yeah. And listen, he couldn't afford me. I will just say that. Like I was deep into my career at this time. I was established.
But it's a bridge.
But it's like, he also is doing pretty okay. And like, it was just kind of like, pay me whatever you were paying her at that time. But you're going to have to pick up more of the bills because now I'm not making this over here. But like, then we'll just figure everything out once I get back into my corporate gig. And so it was just like, it was just on a whim.
Were you the benefit provider, the health insurance provider too?
Yes. And that's why that's why I was like, I'll still have benefits. I'll have COBRA.
For 30 days.
But I'll go back and I'll get my cushy benefits because my husband is an entrepreneur at this time.
You need that.
I had the benefits from the bank, really great benefits, So that was the plan. So I submitted my resignation that day. And what happens in banking is to be professional, you give 2 weeks notice, but they're not going to keep you for the 2 weeks. They'll pay you for the 2 weeks, but they cut you off right away because they don't want me to go and steal their clients and bring them to whichever other bank I'm going to.
They don't want you to have access to the emails.
Anything.
Yeah. Okay, that's similar to the entertainment industry.
Which I was super excited. I'm like, please cut me. And I knew they'd pay me for the 2 weeks, which they did.
Did they tell you don't even bother coming in then?
So I came in to get my stuff on that Monday and then I was out. That was it. And I was the happiest thing ever. So then I started working with my husband, and his right-hand person trained me before she left. And that's why I say that this whole thing changed my life in a major way because I never went. So spoiler alert, I never went back to corporate. My husband liked that I was working with him. I liked working with him. It allowed me more time to continue podcasting because at the time this all happened, I was a podcaster, but it wasn't my full-time gig. It was on the side. And this would allow me.
What did that look like? What were you doing as far as were you doing episodes out of your house? What was the name of your podcast?
Yeah. So Murderish, which is still around. I still produce episodes of Murderish. I had launched Murderish before I got to Bank of California. So I was a podcaster with Murderish, but it was just like a side thing. The banking was my career where I made my money. When I started working with my husband, I'm like, I can help him. I'll learn his business. That's really fun. I'll be able to pick my daughter up from school every day because our office is like 5 minutes, from home, 5 minutes from my daughter's school. So I'll get to be like a working outside the home mom, which I love, but I'll also get to be that mom that goes to the carpool and picks my daughter up every day. So it was like the best of both worlds. And we would just figure out the money later. And that's what we did. And I started ramping up with Murderish. Now all of a sudden I had more time to grow my podcast to a point where fast forward to today, my podcast is what feeds me. Like I still work with my husband, but I 1 day a week because he trusts me and he wants me to do the things, but he also wants me to follow my passion and my business and grow my podcasting career. So I kind of still do it all. Like I'm full-time podcasting. but I'm also working with my husband once a week doing the books and all the things there. And it's great. And I wish that Mary Carole would have never done what she did because of the trickle down effect and my colleagues got fired. It's for me, if I'm being honest, not that I want this or wanted this or asked for this. It changed my life for the better. And again, I wish it never happened, but it did. And because it happened, I was able to leave corporate. I've never looked back. I've never had a commute since then. And now I'm like the balance between like a stay-at-home mom-ish, but also like a career mom. And I kind of love it. And it's
love that for you.
Yeah, I do too. And but I do hate what she did. And so let's see. Oh, but after this all blew up, I left the bank. I'm working with my husband. I'm podcasting. I'm picking my daughter up from school. I could never stop thinking about Mary Carole McDonnell. How could I still had so many questions. Who is she? When I tell you that I still thought she was an heiress, I still thought she was an heiress. I did not know. I found out later, and I'll get into it, but she was just a fraud in so many different regards.
Wait, there's no 80 million.
There ain't no 80 million. There's no family trust. There is no heiress. So I couldn't stop thinking about her. Fast forward to 2021. I get picked up by a podcast network called Cloud 10 Media, which you and I are both now a part of this network with Lipstick and Lies. But I get picked up by Cloud 10 for my show Murderish. And soon after I got picked up, I just got a really good vibe from Cloud 10. And I was like, you know what? I have an idea for a podcast. There's this lady that came in and did a fraudulent loan at the bank. I think there's more to this story. What if I investigate her, find out all there is to know, and we do a podcast about her? They love the idea.
Okay.
So we launched Dirty Money Moves Women in White Collar Crime. And season 1 was dedicated to my investigation of Mary Carole McDonnell. This is the time at which I found out exactly who she is, what she's done in her past, and it is mind-blowing that it wasn't just that she walked in casually and took 15 million and maybe she's an heiress, maybe not. There's so much more to it. So I began investigating her. I dove into her past, her childhood, her college, her professional career in TV, which was extensive. I secured pivotal sources who came forward, got a lot of leads. And then we launched the podcast, Dirty Money Moves, in April of 2022. And in season 1, episode after episode, I laid out everything that I learned about Mary Carole.
Does Mary Carole know that you exist? Has she tried to file a lawsuit against you?
Bitch, she is not in a power position right now because you'll find out at the end, she doesn't hold the power anymore. Okay. And I am not afraid of her. Okay. And I've thought about that. And we talked about it before, but it's like, when you know the position she's in as of today's date, you're like, fuck you. Come at me, bro. Like, really. I wish a motherfucker would. No, okay.
But don't wish that.
Yeah, no. I don't wish that. I don't. Let me back up. Okay.
No one wants a lawsuit.
Nobody wants a lawsuit, but I would imagine it would have come by now. Knock, 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 because the podcast has been out for a while. But so what we found out about Mary Carole McDonnell was absolutely wild. This story was much bigger than I and my colleagues or anybody ever knew. Like, nobody really knew who she was and what she'd been doing for decades. So the first thing I learned in my research is, surprise, surprise, this bitch is not an heiress. Okay. She is not wealthy heiress. Her family, her father back in the day owned like a successful grocery, like a market, but not buku bucks heiress status. Where she got the heiress part is pretty interesting. So her last name is McDonnell, McDonnell. There's a company called McDonnell Douglas, which back in the day, I think in the 1980s, it merged with Boeing, the airplane manufacturing company. So McDonnell Douglas was a big company. And she likes to say that her father was one of the co-founders of McDonnell Douglas, which eventually merged with Boeing back in the day. Okay. She's not. Yes, they have the same last name. That's not her father. But she has been telling this lie for decades, not just to the bank. We found out this has been a lie that she has told all her employees at Bellum Entertainment. She's been lying her ass off. Like, it's crazy. So we learned that she wasn't an heiress. And we also learned, okay, she was born in December of 1951 in St. Louis, Missouri. She's one of 6 children. Mary Carole is the second to youngest McDonnell child. Her father is Russell McDonnell. Her mother is Ava Muse. Both of her parents were Christian scientists back in the day. And her father was an entrepreneur, but not wealthy, crazy wealthy. The McDonnell family loved music. Most of the kids, including Mary Carole, sang or played instruments. And Mary Carole had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Her little sister, Marilyn Holly McDonnell, was 3 years younger than Mary Carole, and she was her very best friend in life. They were very close. Holly McDonnell, she went by Holly, was born with Down syndrome. And in 1966, tragedy struck. And 11-year-old Holly McDonnell was playing outside with a neighbor boy. He was 14 years old. He also had special needs. And events transpire, and the little boy, the 14-year-old, goes and grabs a hunting knife and comes out, and he stabs Holly. And she does end up dying on the way to the hospital. So this is Mary Carole's little sister, best friend in life. So this is when I started to realize maybe this traumatizing event made Mary Carole take a turn for the worse and made her become a fraudster, scam artist. Like, I don't know, but certainly this was a pivotal time and a very tragic time in her life. And I think it was life altering. So, but what's crazy, what's disgusting about it is that Mary Carole, I found out in my research, is that she later spun that tragedy into a huge lie. So remember how I told you she would tell everybody she was an heiress, right?
Yeah.
She even told her husbands, I'm an heiress. My family's very substantial.
I just don't have the money yet.
Yeah. Just don't have the money yet. And she would also be like, don't talk to my family about this. It's very sensitive, but we're very wealthy. So she would, you know what I mean? She didn't want them to get the truth.
That'll make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it'll make them all feel uncomfortable, and it'll also expose my lie. But not only did she tell people that she was from this substantial family, she would tell people, so many people throughout the decades, that her little sister, Holly, who was killed by a hunting knife by the neighbor boy, she would tell people, my sister was kidnapped, held for ransom, and murdered. So even within Bellum Entertainment, there was just this lore, like, even within Bellum Entertainment, you will not find any of their shows that they produced that are about child victims, because everybody knew in the company, Mary Carole's sister, little sister, her best friend, was kidnapped, held for ransom, and murdered. And it's very sensitive. And that therefore we will not be covering cases involving child victims. Well, while it is true, she had a very traumatic event, and yes, her sister was killed, she was never held for ransom and never murdered. But it made sense that she would tell people that my sister was held for ransom, because that only happens to wealthy people.
Right.
And if you're a wealthy heiress,
it just validated it.
It validated it, but it was a lie. And after high school, Mary Carole, she attends Principia College, which is a small liberal arts school rooted in Christian Science. That's in St. Louis. She blows through her tuition money on personal items, calls her daddy, daddy bails her out. So she has a history of like, oh my God, waterworks. Oh my God, dad, I didn't mean to. And then like her dad would bail her out, right? But she's always been bad with money is what I learned. Bad. Overspender, lived beyond her means. And to a certain extent, her dad would bail her out. So after college, she gets married to a guy named Shapley Mather. They don't work out. They end up getting divorced pretty quickly. But after
why? Because she lies?
Probably. I didn't get to talk to Shapley, who goes by Hap, but I did get to speak to some other people who were close to her who wished to remain anonymous, and they shed some light on what she was like.
Is this all on Dirty Money Moves?
Yes.
So all the details of this.
Yes. Okay. Way more detail than what I'm going into today. And there's just a lot of twists and turns. Like,
yeah, fascinating lady.
Yeah, very fascinating. So she graduates from college. Mary Carole meets a guy named Blake Byrne. He's the station manager for WJAR TV in Providence, Rhode Island. Byrne was a guy who had a lot of success in the TV business over a decade. He saw something special in Mary Carole. So he hires Mary Carole. He becomes her mentor in the TV biz. And she kind of follows Blake Byrne around and works with him. She follows him to Texas when he got a big promotion. And his success had spanned over like 35 years. He is who got Mary Carole into the TV business and taught her everything she knows. But along with teaching her everything he knew about TV, he also taught her some shady shit. And this also may have been what turned her into the scam artist that I know she is today. And basically, Blake Byrne apparently participated in check kiting, which is also a form of bank fraud. And he taught Mary Carole that, and she later adopted similar behaviors in business. So she gets into the TV biz. Everybody around her.
What is that? What is check kiting?
So check kiting in simple terms is like I go and I get a checkbook. I open an account and it either has no money in it or it's closed eventually. But I write checks on it and I go and deposit that check at my account at another bank. And then
It's going to bounce.
Well, not if you withdraw those funds right away. And sometimes banks will let you do that. You bring a check in for a couple $100s and go, I'd like to cash this. The bank doesn't know yet that that check's not going to clear. So if you do it fast enough and you withdraw the cash right away from that check, eventually the bank that you cash the check for you is going to get left holding the bag, so to speak, but they don't know that right away. And then so on and so on and so on. She'll take checks from closed accounts or accounts that don't have any money, deposit it over here, get the cash. Deposit over here, get the cash. And by the time the bank finds out, she's already got the cash.
That can't happen anymore today, right? That doesn't happen.
It can happen, but they've got a lot more secure like controls on it. And the bank is very aware that people do that. But like when she started doing it, it was probably kind of like a new thing. And the bank wasn't as tight and, you know, just it can happen. And she did that. And she learned it from Blake Byrne, apparently. So she also, at one point, quit the TV business, went and tried to open up a dress shop in Missouri. Her dad funded it. That thing folded, and she got into legal trouble. And this may be the very first time she got into legal trouble. She was, it was credit card trouble. Oh, she allegedly committed $100,000 in credit card fraud. We were able to pull up the records. So she had to go to court for this. So I don't know if it was like she was using cards that weren't hers or what, but she got wrapped up in some legal trouble. And again, her dad kind of like, when she faced the charges in court, kind of bailed her out and paid those debts off. So she was used to getting bailed out. Being a bad girl, get bailed out. So her heiress lie, the lie that she told everybody around her, family, friends, colleagues, employees, it dates back to like the mid 1980s is when I was able to track when she first started. That's when she first started perpetuating that I am this person who's better than you. I'm an heiress. She always like walked around a little bit snobby, like I'm just above it all, you know?
Well, she probably believed it. At that point, you believe your lies.
She may have, and I think she did, you know? And she spent lavishly during this time when she was in she got back into the TV biz after the dress company folded and she got in legal trouble with credit cards. She's back in the TV biz. She's got a fancy condo in Los Angeles. She's got a Porsche. She's got an air of superiority, and she's really trying to erase her small town past. She's from St. Louis, Missouri. She's not a big time, you know, but she wants everybody to think like I'm big time. She gets married again to a guy named Tom Carroll, which is funny because then that now makes her new name Mary Carole, which is a little bizarre.
She could just be Carol Mary. No, she could be. Never mind.
Because her name's Mary Carole. Yeah, not Mary. So in 1988, she gives birth to two twin boys, Sean and Mackenzie. She calls the other one of them Mac. So Sean and Mac.
How are the boys today?
They don't talk to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. From what I know, they're fine now, but they got put through the ringer for their mom's shenanigans. Like, bad.
Do you talk about that in your Dirty Money Moves podcast? Did they interview with you?
No, but I have interviewed other people who are
close to them.
Yeah, and got word back from that person that they're just gonna hold off for now. It has been like deeply traumatic for them.
Of course.
The whole thing. So, which I understood. So, you know, sources told me that the boys were largely raised by their father and by a nanny, that Mary Carole was just really focused on other things, trying to make money, scams, whatever. 1994, she moves back to California, gets a big job offer. And then I'm trying to get to the good part. So she lands major roles in TV.
There's a good part? Wait, there's a good part?
You're not going to believe. You're not going to believe what we found out. So she's basically, now she's back in LA. She's this big TV executive. And you got to understand, like, everybody around her, she's in a Porsche, multi-million-dollar home. She's a TV exec. She knows her shit. She's a wealthy heiress. Like, don't fuck with Mary Carole. Like, she's got it going on. And nobody knew what was going on behind the scenes until we did this investigation.
Yeah, why would they know? It's a banking situation.
Yeah, they don't know that, like, even besides the banking thing, she was already committing scams, other scams. So then in 2007, while Mary Carole is this big TV executive, she's this heiress, whatever, she starts approaching some of her wealthy colleagues and friends. I'm talking like like attorneys, big producers, like people with, just people with money. And she's like, hey, I have this gifting program, right? Yeah. It just sounds so MLM. Like, it just sounds so.
How about
Yeah.
you
got a couple mil? So that's exactly what she did. She would go to like an expensive lunch with like her lawyer friend who's got a multi-million-dollar law firm, right? Let's just say. And she'd be like, look, I've got this opportunity to invest. You know, I have a family trust. It's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My portion is just 80 million. We're doing this gifting program that if you invest, say, $1 million in a year, the ROI on that is going to be like 20%. So you're going to get a 1.2 million back. And I've done it with other people and you can talk to them. Like, they're part of my gifting program. So, but you want to probably act fast because like this is going to close in a year when I get my payout from my family trust, right?
Just making a new bridge loan.
It's a new bridge loans. So essentially, Mary Carole told people that she was the trustee of this family trust and she was authorized to offer 20% return on investment in 1 year. Sounds great. These people trust her. They are close friends. She's a smart lady, well regarded in the industry. So they're like, you know what? I've got $1 million laying around. Like, I'm a successful guy. I'd love to get 1.2 million back in a year. Mm-hmm. Well, so she has a colleague of hers. This is just one example. This happened over and over and over again. One employee invests $100,000 initially, but then he ups it to $660,000.
Hopefully he didn't mortgage his home for it. Or like.
Not this guy, but maybe other people did. But then she kept hitting him up. People described her as relentless. You know, sources came forward and they're like, I got hit up for her gifting program and I was lucky because I said no, but I know that my homeboy, like he invested 2 million and she was relentless. If you wanted to come in with like $100,000 initially, she'd be like, oh my God, do $1 million. You know, you can afford it. Like the trust is going to close. You should do it now. This guy over here made 200,000 last year on it. So that was her signature scam for a long time. She started doing this in like 2007. Up until like the date of the bank thing. She was still doing it.
And how would she just get away from the victims? Would she just stop taking their phone calls and run away?
Or she would come up with excuses. So numerous people in her life, and they're named in Dirty Money Moves, some of them, some not, fell for this scam. And it was a scam. There was no family trust. People fell for it because they trusted her. These are very smart people. Like, these are not dumb people. So that was just one of her scams, but it was her signature scam. And she got multi-millions of dollars doing that over several years. And nobody in the industry knew this was going on. Like, they were shocked when they found out that she was doing this. Like, she's the last person you suspect of doing this. Mm-hmm. So anyway, in 2012, that's when she establishes Bellum Entertainment. That's the Los Angeles-based TV production company. And here's some names of shows. They produced Deep Undercover, Bizarre Murders, It Takes a Killer, and more and more and more. Like, all these true crime shows. And Bellum Entertainment.
Well, I'm sure those were legit.
Yeah. The people who worked on them were legit.
Yeah.
Now, she wasn't legit. And I found out later through the investigation too, that she wasn't paying people at Bellum. She had labor board complaints and everything. Mm. So it was a family affair at Bellum Entertainment. Her sons worked there at one time, her twin sons, her nephew, her very close friends. And that's by design. Now I understand who she is. If she's going to be a scam artist and do shady things and not pay employees, she needs family members. Maybe not to fully help her. Maybe they didn't know exactly what was going on. I don't think her sons knew anything. Mm-hmm. But certainly, like, it makes it easier to perpetuate if you have people that you trust in your inner circle to be a bad person. And around this time, Mary Carole quietly gets married to her third husband, Dr. Jeffrey Nilles. He was a Glendale ophthalmologist, and he was retired, I think, by the time they got together, or maybe right after. And, during this time, she's running her gifting program, which is a scam, and asking for investors' money and not paying them. And then when they would call her a year later and go, okay, so where's my return on investment? Oh, don't worry. There was an issue. It's delayed, but you're going to get your money. Like, she did this over and over and over until they realized, like, okay, we're not getting our money.
Did she pay anybody back or no?
She did. And it's kind of, there's a term called like wetting the beak, meaning like successful scam artists often do show people a return on their investment, but only to go after the big bucks later that they're not going to pay them back. Because if you think about it, if I invest $50,000 and I get $10,000 back a year later, I'm like, oh my God, it worked. This is real.
Yes. So then
she goes in for the big bucks. Exactly. And so, yeah, there were some people who got some money back, but ultimately she by and large didn't pay people their money, just as part of her scam, maybe a little bit, but for the most part, no. And around this time, she was also not paying Bellum employees. Shockingly, the labor board was already on her ass, and she already had numerous wage complaints, people protesting outside of Bellum Entertainment employees because she wasn't paying at the same time the bank made this loan. So the bank knew she had some internal problems. They knew this.
Wow.
But she was able to explain it away.
That doesn't surprise me. So how it works when you sell a program, a TV show, is that you get milestone payments. So she could probably she'll get like a large windfall of money to start the project, to start production, because you have to hire on a team. And then you produce your first rough cut. After your rough cut, you get your next milestone payment. I don't know if it was always that way. I've just always known it that way. I bet you in the past, networks have given just all of it up front and then never, like maybe some people walked off with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for her, there would be checks and balances, just like with a bank, where she would have gotten a chunk of money to start the project. And so I could see where she could bring on employees, pay them like a little bit,
and then not
just
pay
not
them.
pay them.
And that's exactly what was happening. I mean, she was not paying people left and right.
But she still needed to produce the content. So there would probably be a very large overturn. So
there was a huge turnover in the company. People would be like, fuck this shit. Like this, I'm out. But then new people would come in. They didn't know anything, know? So it takes a while.
Yeah.
It takes a while for people to start spreading the news that this lady, you shouldn't work for her, right? Like it just takes a while. So, and even in 2017, Christine Lazar, a CBS 2 News investigative reporter, hosted a segment about the non-payment accusations of Bellum workers. So they raised the alarm bells. They're like, we're not being paid. They contact the labor board and they reach out to Christine Lazar, and she does a segment, and there are clips of it out there that you can, I think I played some of them on Dirty Money Moves. And this really is the time. This is 2017. This is blowing up Mary Carole's spot. This is when people in the industry, maybe not everybody else, outside and nobody at the bank knew, but this was going on when the bank is giving her this loan, but they don't, whatever. This is when it's like, okay, fuck. This shit's starting to catch up with me, that I'm not paying my employees. Now I've got the news doing a segment on me. I've got people protesting outside of my office.
I have friends who want their $1 million back.
That's right. Exactly. That she has the gifting program and she's got them breathing down her neck, like, give us our money. So there's a lot going on. Now, this all makes sense that around this time that she's got gifting program people going, give us our millions of dollars back that you promised us. And she's got employees saying, give us our damn money. That's when she comes to Bank of California with Barry for a $15 million loan.
Because she needs
the loan, and what she's probably going to do with the money, in which in fact she did, but she needs to pay some people to get them off her back, but keep most of it and then keep being a scam artist. That's just how it works. If she were to just never pay anybody and just it would all implode. Yeah. So she was trying to keep things going, and Bank of California was part of that plan. And she came to Bank of California, and of course, Barry's dead. So we'll never know if he truly was a part of it. But I can sit here and tell you today, if I were to bet $1 billion on it, if I had it, yes, he was involved. If I were to bet, right? I can't prove it because he's dead, but everything points in my opinion, allegedly, that Barry Rothman was in cahoots with Mary Carole McDonnell on this.
I think he wasn't.
There's a lot of evidence.
Is there?
Oh yeah, and you're going to hear about Barry Rothman.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is almost
thinking
over.
the poor guy just went to the dentist and died.
Oh God, I can't wait to tell you what actually happened.
Okay, well, because I'm like, oh, poor Barry is just like,
yeah, and I'm trying to take you on the roller coaster ride that we went on. Your exact emotions, and you start forming opinions, and then you learn more, and you're like, oh fuck, no, okay, now that's the ride that we went on with the story.
Okay.
Like we didn't know the full truth until Dirty Money Moves and like we investigated, you know?
Okay.
So
I want to say, so if people are listening, I want to save some of those juicy things for them to listen on your podcast. You're not going to do a spoiler alert, right?
oh yeah, I'm going to tell you the whole story. We're almost done. Yeah. And it's okay. If they want to listen to Dirty Money Moves, it's interesting because there's so much more in there than I'm even giving you today. So
I'm like, don't ruin it.
Oh
for
no,
people
it's
who want to go on
fine.
the journey on Dirty Money Moves.
It's like another forum for me to tell the story, but like if you want a true deep dive and you want to know
you
that
got it.
I got it. So her empire, Mary Carole's empire is collapsing. Investors are breathing down her neck for their money. Employees are walking out of Bellum. There's labor board complaints. And so that is when she comes to the bank, and that her next move, I found out later, is call up my boy, Barry Rothman, and he can get me into a bank that he thinks that we could steal this money from. I'm making that up, but like, I think that's what happened.
And Barry's like, oh, this bank has some bad press.
Yeah, maybe. I know this guy that I'm close with, my colleague.
We went to the strip club together.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe he did. So 75-year-old Barry Rothman, the entertainment lawyer, on Avenues of the Stars, he brings Mary Carole to the bank. We all know what happened next. However, in my investigation, this is when I also learned who Barry Rothman really is.
Okay.
Yes, it's true that he was a high-profile entertainment lawyer. Yes, it's true that he repped all the celebrities that I told you that he repped in the past. It is also true that he was ruthless and money hungry, and people despised him in the industry. And he fired staff constantly at his law firm. He failed to pay salaries constantly. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Like him and Mary Carole are two crooked peas in a pod.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that she called up her homeboy, Barry. She probably knew some of this shit about him and was like, hey, I need 15 million. Are you in? That's how I see it going down.
How much money did he get?
Oh, well, he died. So zero. Zero.
How much was he supposed to get?
Who knows? Yeah, I would love to know that. And he was known to verbally abuse and berate female employees at his office, okay? In addition to that, he was not good about paying alimony or child support. In fact, he was so bad because he got a divorce about not paying that his wife was able to go and get his 1977 Rolls-Royce Corniche repoed. Because he just wouldn't pay. He was just a total dirtbag when it came to, and I'm going to use that term because there's so much evidence. He also was found to have shell companies over in Panama. He was hiding money so he didn't have to pay alimony. Like he was a shady mofo, just like Mary Carole. We didn't know this at the time. And Barry Rothman loved to be tan. Now this 70-something-year-old dude always had a tan, but he was so tan because he had an in-home tanning bed that he looked like a damn leprechaun. And people would call him that. Like, so when you show the photo, dude looks like a leprechaun. You'll see the photo.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. So he was behind on alimony, child support. He'd do anything to dodge financial responsibility. He once made up a story about being robbed at gunpoint to dodge financial responsibilities. He had numerous Panama shell companies, seemingly to hide assets. Numerous creditors would go on to sue him for non-payment. So you get and in 1992, his law license was suspended. However, it got reduced to a brief probation and then he was back in business. So by the time Mary Carole hit him up for this scam, he was a lawyer.
Okay.
His law firm filed BK back in 1992, and then things get interesting. And I promise you this is almost over. This is when it gets interesting. In the early 1990s, Barry Rothman, this is before the Mary Carole thing. This is back in Barry's heyday when he's like this entertainment lawyer, right? In the early 1990s, Barry meets a man named Evan Chandler in Beverly Hills because Evan Chandler is a Beverly Hills dentist. Dun, dun, dun. No.
Wait, was this the dentist who he goes to when he dies?
We'll see.
Okay.
So I hate to do that. Oh, we'll see. As if I don't know. So Evan Chandler is a Beverly Hills dentist. He becomes Barry's like go-to dentist guy.
Let me guess, he wants mega white teeth and
Yeah,
and a Oompa Loompa tan.
Yeah, he wants the Oompa Loompa tan. Now, something else interesting besides the fact that Barry had to be tan all the time, Barry also was a major pussy. And I'm sorry to use that word, but I just have to, like, the dude was a fraidy cat, and he was so afraid of dental procedures. I'm talking like pretty routine shit that
like getting your teeth cleaned.
Yeah, it probably maybe he was even just getting fluoride. Who knows? He would ask to be put under anesthesia just for like routine shit. Now, probably big stuff too, but he was well known to go in to see his dentist. They would bring in an anesthesiologist just for Barry for like shit that you and I are like, nah, I'm good. Give me a little numbing gel, you know? So that was what Barry did. 2 years later, after he met this Beverly Hills dentist named Evan Chandler, Barry becomes Chandler's lawyer in one of America's biggest Hollywood scandals involving Michael Jackson. So we're going to tie this story into Michael Jackson. Evan, the Beverly Hills dentist's 12-year-old son, Jordy, became really friendly with Michael Jackson back in the 90s through very random circumstances. I could get into it, but he became friendly with Michael Jackson. Okay. Jordy the 12-year-old began having sleepovers at Neverland Ranch with Michael Jackson. He became extremely close with MJ. 1993 rolls around, and while under the influence of a controversial drug called sodium amytal, Jordy, the 12-year-old, he was getting his tooth pulled by his father at his father's dental practice. They put him under this controversial drug. This is not a drug that's normally used to put kids or people down for a tooth extraction. While Jordy is under this drug and getting his tooth pulled, he claims that the son to his father that Michael Jackson sexually abused him numerous times. And Evan goes and tells Barry Rothman. Well, what does Barry Rothman do? He sees dollar signs. So Barry Rothman is like, well, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to rep you for free. You're my friend. You're my dentist. We are going to sue Michael Jackson for $20 million. We're going to get $20 million. We're going to extort Michael Jackson. Of course, he probably didn't use those words, but 100% it was an extortion scheme for $20 million against Michael Jackson. And seemingly Evan Chandler, Jordy's dad, was an accomplice. And the reason I say that it was like nefarious, they didn't have good intentions, because if this did happen to Jordy, and I have no reason to believe it didn't, I believe Jordy, the father should have gone to law enforcement. You would think that he would go to law enforcement and say, excuse me, my son has these very like serious claims against Michael Jackson. I want an investigation. That's not what he did. He went to Barry Rothman. Barry Rothman also didn't go to law enforcement. Barry Rothman's like, we're going to extort $20 million out of Michael Jackson. And if he doesn't pay up, then we're going to go to the news and blow up his spot. So that's what happens. Barry and Evan never went to law enforcement. Barry Rothman and Evan Chandler, they never go to law enforcement. Instead, they try to extort the money from Michael Jackson. Barry demands over and over again $20 million from Michael Jackson's camp, saying, otherwise, we're going to go public with this.
Were they ever paid any fraction of money?
Yes, they were. And it's a very sad story. Eventually, law enforcement does get notified, not by... not by the right people, not by Jordy's dad and not by Barry Rothman. And then, of course, the story is leaked to the press. And then that's when we all found out about it. Like, this is what broke open this is the original case. Jordy was the first accuser of Michael Jackson. He would have accusers after that and would in fact go through trial. But Jordy and Barry Rothman, they were the first ones to sort of like accuse Michael Jackson. The story explodes. The world hears about it. I remember hearing about it. At that time, Barry's like, well, fuck, now I got to hire a lawyer. He hires Robert Shapiro.
Oh my gosh.
Who you know very well.
Yes.
And people will know his name from the O.J. Simpson trial. He represented O.J. Simpson. Michael Jackson retains Johnny Cochran. So another huge,
O.J.
OJ lawyer.
Yeah.
And Michael Jackson was actually never indicted on these charges for the Jordy accusations. And the extortion charges against Barry and Evan were eventually dropped. However, and I want to make it clear, I believe Jordy. I'm not saying that anything about his story is false. He's an innocent child who went to his father with something. It's his father and Barry Rothman who didn't do the right thing to protect him. They didn't go to law enforcement. They just tried to get a bunch of money. So then Michael Jackson's insurance company actually does pay out $20 million on a negligence claim. They don't admit to any abuse against Jordy, but on a negligence claim, the insurance company of Michael Jackson pays out, and $15.3 million goes to Jordy, the victim, alleged victim. I don't know what to say here, although I believe him. Evan Chandler and his ex-wife got $1.5 million. Barry Rothman got $0 because the rest of the money of that $20 million went to all the lawyers. So Barry Rothman tried to do this whole thing. He's the one who concocted it. He didn't get a dime. Thank goodness. So after that point, after that all blew up, Evan Chandler was like one of the most hated men in America. People saw him as a horrible father. You didn't protect your son. You tried to get this money. You did get some money, but you should have handled this a different way. This forever changes Evan Chandler, the Beverly Hills dentist. He's never the same after this moment. Had to change his appearance because people were like after him and things like that. And in fact, on June 25th of 2009, that's when Michael Jackson dies. 3 months later, in mental and physical pain, Evan Chandler ends up dying by suicide in his New York apartment. So he ends up ending things at that point. Mary Carole and Barry, they met in 2009 around the same time as the Michael Jackson, Barry Rothman legal drama was all going on. That's when Barry Rothman and Mary Carole started their relationship, like as friends, or Barry would represent Mary Carole on certain business contracts. So then you fast forward to 2017, early 2018, that's when Barry introduces Mary Carole to the bank. That's when she gets the $15 million. That's when Barry Rothman dies mysteriously.
By the dentist?
So
wait, by the no, he's gone.
So
he's passed away. He committed suicide, correct?
No, Evan Chandler, Barry Rothman's dentist, who was Jordy, Michael Jackson's alleged victim's father, he died by suicide after trying to team up with Barry and extort $20 million out of Michael Jackson. Barry's still alive at that point. And then Barry...
No, I mean the dentist. Barry goes to the dentist and he dies.
Barry goes to the dentist, but Barry doesn't die until 2018, right after the fraudulent loan was obtained from Bank of California. So what really happened was that Barry Rothman did go to the dentist. He went home to his new wife, and he basically dies of like a heart attack or a stroke. He was not a man who was healthy. He had diabetes. He had had some heart issues in the past. I have his death certificate. It had nothing to do with being in the dental chair. Okay. Nothing like that. He was an unhealthy person. But how that story got spun is kind of interesting. How the rumor got out, how we found out so fast that Barry died, was because the investigators, whether it was the FBI investigators or the corporate security investigators, they interrogated my colleague who was very close to Barry. They were friends. He's the one who got referred the deal. Yeah. In the interrogation, they looked at him, and for shock value, because they're just trying to get something out of him, like, were you involved in this? They looked at him in the eye and they're like, and Barry Rothman's dead, right? Your friend's dead, right? And he's like, wait, what? And he got chills. And they told him, yeah, he went to the dental chair and he died. My colleague comes out of this interrogation. That's when his face was super white. And that's when he goes and eventually tells us, do you guys guess what? Barry Rothman's dead and he died in the dental chair. It was really corporate security or the FBI, I can't remember which one it was, who spun that to try and use it to get more information out of my colleague. So it's like, Mary Carole did not kill Barry Rothman. I'm pretty positive of that, but it was pretty crazy. So that is really the story. subsequent to that, of course, the bank is out $15 million. The insurance company denies their claim. So now the bank's like, well, fuck, we need our $15 million. The law enforcement gets involved. Like I said, FBI was involved. Mary Carole there is a Los Angeles grand jury in 2019 who does end up indicting Mary Carole on like 6 federal charges. So, but guess what? Mary Carole has never spent a day in a Los Angeles court because she is still nowhere to be found in 2023. This is 5 years later. She's on the run. She's a wanted person because she has federal charges that she has not answered to. My investigation, I'm pretty sure
probably out of the country with
Yes.
the gifting program.
doing her gifting program. And interestingly, and I'll do some updates on Dirty Money Moves because you can imagine when the podcast came out about Mary Carole, people just came out of the woodwork and I was getting DMs and emails daily, like, oh my God, I know her. Keep my name anonymous. Here's what I know. Oh my God, I know where she is. This is where she's at. I know that. So it was just all this stuff came flooding in to piece together the story. And I can confidently say I'm almost positive that she's in the United Arab Emirates, whether it's Abu Dhabi. I don't know if she's in Dubai. She's like in that area, but she's a wanted person. And I've been in touch with the FBI. I've spoken to the investigator who's in charge of her case a couple of times, and we'll see what happens. She's on the run. And that's my Mary Carole story. And Mary Carole is the reason, that bitch is the reason that I'm a full-time podcaster today and don't any longer work in the corporate world.
Well, that was fascinating.
Interesting.
That was really fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here when you got towards the part where, and they lost their jobs, I'm like, okay, so what else?
Yeah. You're like, so, and that's where the story ends. Dun, dun, dun. And it's like, it's kind of a cool story to be like, okay.
Jamie, you made a podcast out of that?
Well, you know what's funny is that there's a guy by the name of Jim Clemente. Jim Clemente, if you're
I know
him. He's a retired FBI. He's very big in the true crime world and has his own successful podcast. He's part of this story too, because he was hired on as a talking head, like an expert on some of the shows that Mary Carole's company produced, and he didn't get paid. Like she didn't fucking pay him. So, I was at Crime Con in Los Angeles last year, which is a huge, true crime convention. I saw Jim Clemente there. I know who he is. He doesn't know who I am because I've listened to his podcast. I went up to him, shook his hand, and I was like, this is going to sound really bizarre, but are you familiar with the name Mary Carole McDonnell? And he's like, yeah. And, and I'm like, well, I'm producing a podcast about her because this, and that. And he's like, well, she didn't pay people, but like, what else? Like, what do you mean a podcast about Mary Carole McDonnell? And I just looked at him and I said, there's actually a lot more to this. Like, to fast forward, I'm like, I was able to track down that she has elicited illegally $50 million plus in scams. So she's not Anna Delvey. She's like Anna Delvey on steroids, $50 million plus that she was able to scam out of financial institutions, not just the one I worked at, out of her rich friends and colleagues, out of like her gifting program. Like
What's up with Anna Delvey, by the way, getting her own show? And
I hate everything about it.
I don't know anything about her.
Oh.
I actually am so when I'm not producing documentaries that I'm working on, I don't watch true crime because my focus is purely on the subject that I'm working on.
Sure.
I really am hyper-focused.
Yeah.
And to decompress, I watch Real Housewives, which, by the way, I'm obsessed with Real Housewives of New York.
Oh, we got to talk about it. We need to do a bonus. Well, there's also some true crime in Housewives, but we need to do like a little fun bonus thing because I imagine some of our listeners watch The Housewives.
I knew who Jenna Lyons was. Jenna fucking Lyons. I knew
it.
who she was back
Icon.
in the day. Yes.
Icon.
Well, okay. I digress.
Right.
Anywho, I don't know anything about Anna Delvey. Her accent is unique.
She was a scam artist, but like she got her own series, about her.
Who's producing that?
Who's
producing that?
So you have to. It was great. I forgot what it's called, but it was a scripted series about Anna Delvey on Netflix. Okay. But Mary Carole is Anna Delvey on steroids. Like Anna Delvey was able to get some money from hotels.
An Instagram?
Yeah.
Anna Delvey has a
She's
Instagram.
IG famous.
Oh,
she's loving it. People I think
she's
people
1
love
million
her.
followers.
Yeah.
And she's a scam artist.
100%. She's leaning into it now.
So it's her brand is being a scam artist?
Pretty much. And a snob. For no reason. It's not like she even has money, but.
How Anna Delvey tricked New York's party people, The Cut.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to go to just her Instagram real quick.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. I don't follow her. Maybe I do. I've seen some of her stuff, but I think it's reposting
her
on
handle
TikTok.
Is the Anna Delvey.
Oh, yeah.
Purchase my artwork.
You're so cool.
Wow. It's a whole brand then. So I guess her last name is Sorkin?
Yes, Anna Sorokin or something like that.
Calls out reporters who treat her like she's crazy during surprise lecture in Columbia journalism students who say she doesn't sound anything like Netflix Anna.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a really great series. I highly recommend. But when I'm trying to describe Mary Carole McDonnell, I'm like, she's like Anna Delvey on steroids because she got buku money over decades. And it's just bizarre.
Okay. It was reported in Variety, which is the entertainment, the entertainment news portion, or how would you say that? It's Variety is a great magazine for people in the entertainment business.
Right.
So I'm pulling this up. Ex-convict Anna Sorokin to film reality series Delvey's Dinner Club during house arrest.
Yeah, no, she was famous. People it's okay that she's a scam artist. The people are just fascinated by her. So.
Okay, so the series comes from Courtney White and Butternut. These are not brands that I'm familiar with in this.
You have to watch the series.
Okay, I'll watch it.
And we can chat about it.
We
can cover it.
We should cover it.
Yeah, we can totally cover it. I think it's a great, great story. And people are fascinated by it.
The two worlds that we live in.
She's a female perp. So final thoughts on, just this Mary Carole. Do you think she'll be caught? Are we going to see? I really want to see her do a perp walk. I know a lot of people who want to see her do a perp walk. Will that ever happen?
I guess, we cover so many crimes where there is a more serious, there's death, there's murder. Nobody was murdered. There were some traumatized, she lost her sister, but she wasn't murdered. Maybe she should come back and get her own reality show that she produces.
Can you imagine? And a lot of people ask too, you alluded to in the beginning, I'm almost positive that Mary Carole knows that I did a podcast about her. I'm almost positive because all these people who were in her inner circle and outer circle, came forward. The news spread fast that somebody was investigating Mary Carole, and they're like, oh my God, finally, because these people, it just took over their world for so long. It's I know.
Maybe I'm desensitized because I'm okay, she's out in the world. She's not murdering anybody. All right, whatever. Well, how old is she now?
Now she's in her 70s. Early 70s.
Last season of her life. I'm
But the people that she treated like dog shit and took their millions of dollars, and there were divorces over this because the financial strain.
Okay, now you're bringing a human element to it. Versus,
and that's the thing.
I still go back to the bank it's hard for me to feel sympathy for a bank, but when you think about real victims and human victims, that's a different
forged
situation.
her own twin son signature.
Oh.
She forged her own twin son signature on a big loan, which then she didn't pay off. And so they got wrapped up into court for years and years.
Wow.
And they had financial devastation because of their mom as well. And again, there's different levels. It's not like we have to compare you got to feel so sorry. She wreaked a lot of havoc on
people.
A lot of people. And for me, I'm so invested in this because she came into the bank. I saw my colleagues get fired. I know what she did. She's a disgusting human being. And I'd rather see other perpetrators locked up before her. Trust me, there's murderers out there, there's cases. Yeah. But for my own satisfaction and so many other people I've talked to throughout this process, I want that bitch locked up. She deserves it.
Vindication.
Yeah. And she's financially dangerous, But,
all right, lie detectors, tell us your thoughts.
Yeah.
I want to know. I actually want to know.
I do too.
because this is such a different case where nobody was murdered, but that doesn't mean there aren't real victims.
Sure.
Not saying that.
Yeah.
But curious on their thoughts.
Yeah. You guys, lie detectors, tell us what you think about Mary Carole. Do you think Barry Rothman was in on it? What do you think about the ties to the Michael Jackson scandal? What do you think that anybody from Credit should have been fired? Do you think my colleagues should have been fired?
Yeah, tell us what you think.
Yeah.
Want to
We
know.
want to know everything. Thanks
really
for
wanna know.
listening. And Melissa, thanks for sitting through my long scam story.
This was fun.
Okay,
I got
good.
to know.
Good. I had fun too. Bye. Hey, lie detectors, leave a 5-star rating and drop your favorite lipstick in the review section because we lie detectors don't gatekeep.
And follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Lipstick and Lies if you want to see behind the scenes and clips of us recording each episode. And be a part of the lie detector community.
Executive producers of Lipstick and Lies are Melissa Moore, myself, Jami Rice, and Sim Sarna. The podcast is co-produced by Cloud 10 Media.
Subscribe to Lipstick and Lies so you don't miss an episode.
We all know that crime is usually a good old boys club, but sometimes the truth lies behind lipstick.